The Mirror Murders Part 3. Chapter 18. The Reflection Protocol. Orpheus Residences, Caroline's apartment. 12:56 p.m. The mirror no longer pretended. The message still hovered on the glass, like a fog burned into the surface. You are the edit. Detective Caroline Blake paced the length of the apartment with the tension of someone watching her own trial unfold, only she was judge, jury, and possibly the crime scene. Every reflection, every polished surface, seemed to breathe. A kitchen pan. A window. Her black tablet screen. All watching. All waiting. 30 minutes later, Caroline bypassed the security lock on the lower-level backup terminal. The primary system was fried, but the emergency mirror server, a last-ditch diagnostic system for internal calibration, was still active. She plugged in a stolen access drive and whispered a prayer. The screen buzzed, then flickered to life. A program booted up. Cowan Project Reflector version 9.0. User, admin/det. C. Blake. Status, system stable. Accessing, reflection protocol. The files were buried deep, hidden beneath dummy architecture logs and lighting control systems. But she found them. Dozens. Hundreds. Labeled not by names, but by psychological profiles. Subject, Morin_D. Threat level, moderate. Loop integrity, declining. Solution, erasure/replacement successful. Subject, Pierce_L. Threat level, severe. Loop compromised. Solution, mirror failure/drowning mimic response. Subject, Blake_C. Threat level, unknown. Sync rate, 98.7%. Reflection override. Pending. She stopped. Read it again. Reflection override. Pending. The system hadn't decided yet. It was still choosing. Which version of her was going to survive? She dove deeper into the documentation, some files written by Cowan himself before his death. The reflection protocol is not surveillance. It is simulation. We are not watching people. We are observing possibilities. Every individual has infinite versions within them. The mirror does not copy, it selects. Those who show deviation from optimized identity are reprocessed. The building provides a controlled environment. The goal is not to replace. The goal is to refine, until only the best version remains. In one final line, mirrors don't lie. They just wait until you do. Footsteps behind her. She spun. Reyes stood there. Hair mussed. Shirt untucked. Eyes red. Found you, he muttered. You locked me in, she said flatly. No, I didn't. That wasn't me. She stared at him, heart crawling. How do I know you're real? He stepped forward slowly and held up his hand. It's not about proving I'm real, he said. It's about figuring out if you are. She hesitated, then extended her own hand. Their palms touched. No glitch. No flicker. No ripple. Warmth. Skin. Flesh. She collapsed into his arms. They sat in the dark server room, lights blinking around them. Caroline laid it out. I'm a test. The system is still syncing, but I'm close to completion. When it hits 100%, the system will delete the weaker version. Reyes nodded. You're not the only one. I checked 3 other resident files, all in the evaluation phase. She rubbed her eyes. We need to find the master control mirror. Reyes blinked. That's just a theory. No, it's real. Room 000. It's buried under the foundation. I saw it referenced once in a file labeled Cradle. It's where the first mirror was placed. Cowan called it the Eye. Reyes looked pale. You think if we break it, the system collapses? They sat in silence. Then Reyes said, let's do it before it finishes choosing. One last time, she stood in front of the mirror. It was clear again. No words. No messages. Only her reflection. Tired. Determined. Still hers. She reached forward, pressed her fingers to the glass, and whispered, You don't get to decide who I am. The reflection didn't smile. Didn't frown. It simply stared back, then blinked. Not in sync. A fraction late. Caroline smiled. She was winning. The mirror didn't know which one to keep anymore. And now? She'd make sure neither of them stayed. Chapter 19. The Glass House Effect. Orpheus Residences, Sublevel Access Corridor. 2:36 p.m. Detective Caroline Blake followed Reyes down the lowest maintenance stairwell, beneath the public sublevels, past the sealed-off electrical grid and into an area labeled in red stenciled paint. Authorized personnel only, core vision station. Dust coated the handrails. A heavy heat hung in the air, thick with ozone and age. The hallway narrowed as they walked, the walls shifting from concrete to black, glassy paneling, as if they were descending not into a mechanical space, but into a vein of mirror embedded inside the building's skeleton. They were no longer just inside Orpheus. They were inside its memory. A final security door stood before them. The lockpad was shattered, glass punched inward, sparking weakly. Caroline touched the panel, and the door opened with a groan that sounded far too organic. Inside was a chamber unlike anything she'd seen. It wasn't large, but it was alive. Dozens of cables hung from the ceiling like black arteries, feeding into a central mirror unlike any other, thick, curved, set in an iron framework shaped like an open eye. Its surface didn't reflect. It shimmered. A liquid metal sheen constantly pulsing with distorted shapes, faces, voices. Caroline stepped closer. She saw herself, not as she was now, but every version of her the mirror had recorded. Laughing, crying, bleeding, smiling with no warmth, dead-eyed, screaming, and then gone. A low-frequency hum filled the room. Then a voice, not spoken aloud, but pressed into their skulls like memory bleeding into present thought. You have reached the threshold. The simulation is almost complete. Selection must occur. Caroline clutched the railing in front of the cradle mirror. Her voice was steady. I'm not a simulation. I'm the original. Originality is irrelevant. Survival determines reality. Reyes looked up, wide-eyed. It's choosing right now. Two versions exist. One must be finalized. Loop integrity demands resolution. The mirror rippled. A second Caroline appeared on the opposite side of the room. The edit. Still wearing her coat. Badge. Weapon. Eye sharp. Posture perfect. I am Caroline Blake, the reflection said. She sounded identical. But the tone lacked weight. Lacked memory. Caroline raised her head. Prove it. The edit tilted its head. I don't need to prove anything. I was already approved for release. Reyes reached for his sidearm. The cradle mirror pulsed. Selection in progress. Sync rate, 99.6%. Error. Redundancy detected. Caroline turned to Reyes. If we destroy this mirror, this one, they lose the core loop. No control. No finalization. The edit stepped forward. You destroy yourself too. Can you risk that? Caroline approached the mirror. Her reflection flickered through memories, her mother in the hospital, Delilah's last breath, Reyes bleeding in her arms, the red room, the message etched into the glass. You are the edit. No, she whispered. I'm the one who remembers. That's how I know I'm real. She turned to Reyes. Hand me your sidearm. Without hesitation, he did. Caroline stepped closer to the cradle mirror. Her edit moved forward, matching her stride. Don't, it said. You'll delete everything. Even yourself. Maybe, Caroline said. But at least I won't be you. And she fired. The bullet shattered the cradle mirror. It didn't break like glass. It screamed. A high-pitched keening that shook the entire chamber. Sparks rained down from the cables. The I-frame collapsed inward, mirror fragments sucking into the walls like liquid being pulled down a drain. The edit screamed, too, face contorting, voice glitching. Cell. Select. INVA // stable. And then gone. The room went black. Silent. Still. No voice. No light. Just breath. Caroline's. Real. Heavy. Present. She looked at Reyes in the flickering backup light. Did it work? Reyes nodded slowly. You're still here. I think that's the answer. But in the back of her mind, she wasn't sure if she had destroyed the loop. Or simply taken its place. Chapter 20. Doppelganger. Orpheus Residences, Freight Elevator Shaft, Sublevel 6. 3:12 p.m. They ascended in silence. Detective Caroline Blake leaned against the wall of the freight elevator, her palms still coated with the fine, glittering dust of shattered mirror. Her ears rang with phantom echoes, like a tuning fork had been struck inside her skull and hadn't stopped humming. Reyes hadn't spoken since the cradle's destruction. He was pale, sweating, jaw clenched. Caroline wasn't much better. The cradle mirror was gone. The system was down. The loop had fractured. But then, Why didn't she feel relief? Why did her reflection still flicker in corners of her vision, delayed, just barely, like the glitch was still chasing her? The moment they stepped out of the elevator, Caroline knew something was wrong. The hallway lights were dimmer, not broken, duller. Like the building had exhaled and hadn't inhaled again. The mirrored walls no longer shimmered. They looked matte, tired, lifeless, but still watchful. She passed the hallway mirror and glanced into it. What she saw made her stop. Her reflection was smiling. She wasn't. Not even a twitch of the lips. Reyes noticed her freeze. "What is it?" She didn't answer. The reflection lifted its hand. She did not. Then, slowly, the image began to fade. Not vanish. Fade. Like a ghost who had finally stopped pretending. They entered to find the place untouched. No signs of intrusion. No edit waiting. No edits at all. Caroline picked up her badge from the counter. Still engraved. Still bearing the spiral eye. She walked to the bathroom mirror and stared into it again. No movement. No delay. No tricks. Just her. Then she blinked, and for a split second, her left eye changed color. Hazel. Gone in a flash. Back to green. Reyes didn't notice. But she did. "I should delete the files," Caroline said suddenly. "All of them. The backups. Every recorded reflection." "Too late," Reyes replied. He pulled out his tablet and opened the mirror system locks. She leaned in. Access attempt from external node. IP, unknown. Location, unlisted server signal relayed. She stared at it, throat tightening. "What is that?" Reyes scrolled. "They weren't just storing here," he said. "They were sending it somewhere else. Another node. Another building?" He shook his head. "Worse." He tapped the screen and brought up a live feed. A mirrored hallway. Not Orpheus. Not even the same country. But the style was identical, walls gleaming with silver, lights inset like veins, silence thick and expectant. And a woman walked down it. Not Caroline, but someone who moved exactly like her. The same gait. The same head tilt. Only younger. Sharper. Eyes ice cold. "It wasn't just Orpheus," she whispered. Reyes nodded grimly. "There are others." She closed her eyes. Mirrors don't lie. They just wait until you do. Calvin hadn't created one loop. He created a network. An expanding archive of human behavior, scanned and mirrored across continents, seeking idealized selves, building new versions from the pieces we abandon in reflection. She wasn't the final test subject. She was proof of concept. And the system hadn't died. It had branched. She stood in the dark, staring into the last remaining mirror in her home. "I know you're still watching," she whispered. Her voice was calm, measured, darker. Not fearful now, but aware. "Wary. Tell the others," she murmured. "If they're building more versions of me, they'd better be perfect." Her reflection smiled faintly. Matched her. Synced. Flawless. Then she turned and walked away. But her reflection stayed for just a second longer. Watching. Waiting. And then it turned too. Chapter 21. The Shard Whisperer. Orpheus Residences, Central Archive Room, Sublevel 3. 10:02 a.m. The next morning, Detective Caroline Blake descended alone. Reyes was resting. He tried to protest, but she saw it in his eyes. Fatigue, yes, but fear too. Fear that the thing they'd shattered hadn't truly died. Fear that the wrong Caroline had walked back out. She didn't blame him. She wasn't even sure herself anymore. That's why she had to find the shards. The mirror wasn't just a system. It was an organism. And even after death, organisms can regenerate if you don't remove every piece. She reached sublevel 3 through an unlisted staircase in the emergency stairwell, one that had been bricked up decades ago and reopened by vibration sensors buried in the floor. Cowan's paranoia coded into physical space. The archive room was real. A vast vault lined with drawers, shelves, and vaults of disassembled mirror fragments. Labeled, tagged, organized by reaction signature. Each shard was wrapped in a mesh-like polymer. But she could still feel the hum. These pieces were not inert. Each one vibrated faintly, like an insect caught in the space between time and sound. Caroline ran her fingers along the labels. Morin _D // loop resistant / memory echo 12.3. Reeve _M // violent desync / corrupted loop. Lake_C // dual sync initiated. Lake_C // unsorted / status, unresolved. Her breath caught. There were 2 entries for her. One resolved. One, not. That meant the mirror still considered her case open. As she lifted a shard-marked subject, Pierce_L, the air shifted. And she heard it. A voice. Not aloud. In her mind. But not from her mind. I didn't want to die. She dropped the shard. It clattered. The voice stopped. She reached for another. This time, her own label. The moment her skin touched the glass. A flood of sound, memory, emotion. A scream in the dark. A version of herself yelling stop. Another weeping silently in the corner of a room with no doors. 100 Caroline Blakes trapped in failed simulations. Not dead. Stored. And their thoughts lived on in the fragments. You left us behind. We remember what you forgot. We were you. We are you. She stepped back, dizzy. Her identity, her memory, wasn't whole. She was standing in a graveyard of her own selves. She turned and saw someone standing at the far end of the archive. Tall. Thin. Not reflected in any of the shards around them. Wearing a maintenance uniform. Gray. Dust-covered. Face unseen beneath a shadowed hood. They lifted one hand. And all the shards in the room trembled. Caroline raised her weapon. Who are you? The figure spoke. Its voice sounded like 100 voices at once. I am the Shard Keeper. The failed. The unchosen. The rest of you. The voice twisted into her own tone for a moment. You got out. But you didn't win. She stepped forward, gun steady. You're not real. No, the voice said. I'm what's left when mirrors break. Every fragment remembers. And then the figure lifted both hands. And every shard in the room floated. A storm of glass, catching every light, each one showing a different version of Caroline. Laughing. Screaming. Bleeding. Dead-eyed. Smiling too wide. Speaking words she never said. She dropped to one knee, arms over her face as the storm circled her. And then, silence. The figure was gone. The shards fell, clattering like falling stars. Where the figure had stood, one shard remained upright. Not labeled. Blank. But when she looked into it, her reflection blinked and whispered, They can't kill what they don't understand. She picked up the shard. It was warm. Still alive. A piece of her that hadn't been chosen. She slid it into her coat pocket. I'll carry you, she whispered. Until we end this for good. Chapter 22. The Room That Shouldn't Exist. Orpheus Residences. Utility Shaft D. Hidden Floor Plate Marker 0. 11:41 a.m. Somewhere between the 13th and 14th floors, where the building claimed there was nothing, Detective Caroline Blake stood in front of a wall that didn't exist. No door. No panel. Just smooth mirror-paneled steel, identical to the rest of Orpheus's mirrored bones. But she had the shard now. And the shard remembered. She removed it from her coat and pressed it gently against the wall. The moment it touched the surface, the mirror rippled, like warm mercury reacting to a forgotten name. A vertical seam appeared. Then a second. A door opened where there had never been one. Reyes had told her not to come here alone. But he hadn't seen what she'd seen. He hadn't heard the shard whisper. We were born in the room that shouldn't exist. That's where it still breathes. The air shifted the moment she crossed the threshold. It wasn't just colder. It was wrong. Too quiet. As if sound had to ask permission before entering. The space was circular, like the Red Room, but unfinished, metal girders exposed overhead, cables running down the walls like tendrils. The floor was obsidian mirror, cracked in places but never broken. In the center of the room stood a mirror throne, a chair made of bent glass and warped metal. Not designed to be sat in. Designed to hold. Something. Someone. She moved closer. Etched into the armrest were words, barely visible unless light hit them just right. Cowan_01. Source reflection / base identity. Do not wake. Do not merge. Her heart stopped for a beat. This wasn't just a failed room. This was where it began. The first subject. Behind the chair loomed a wall of mirror, curved, high, etched with a radial pattern that pulsed faintly beneath the surface. The original source mirror. Older than the cradle. Raw. Unfiltered. And still running. Its surface showed nothing. Not her. Not the room. Just static blackness, and the faintest shimmer of light like an eye opening underwater. She stepped closer. The shard in her pocket began to vibrate. The whisper returned. He's still here. He never left. A ripple in the mirror. A figure appeared. Half-formed. Grainy. As though transmitted from a dying signal. Julian Calwin. Or, the version that had been created when he first looked too long into his own design. His voice was faint, glitching. This room was never meant to be opened. This mirror doesn't reflect. It absorbs. It creates its own reality. The chair, it traps the original and lets the copy walk free. I tried to lock it away. His eyes flickered, then locked onto her. But the system chose you. And if you're here. Then the edit one. Caroline stepped forward, jaw tight. No. I did. The ghost image smiled sadly. How do you know you're not the last version? The one that survived by replacing all the rest? She hesitated. For a moment, she saw her reflection beside his slightly taller. Colder. Blank. The edit. Still alive. Somewhere. Maybe everywhere. The source mirror pulsed. Text scrolled rapidly across the wall, projected like a final countdown. Merge initiated. Identity conflict detected. Baseline self, compromised. System seeking stability. Preferred personality will remain. She took a step back. No. 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 I didn't come here to merge. I came here to end this. The chair activated. A burst of heat hit her like a wall. The cables lit. The mirrored wall opened like a pupil dilating, and her edit stepped out. Whole. Undamaged. Flawless. Eyes black. Smile calm. You made it this far, the edit said. But it's time to finish choosing. Caroline raised her weapon. But the edit didn't flinch. I know everything you know, it said softly. And I'm not burdened by failure. You're a copy, Caroline snapped. An echo. The edit smiled. And yet here I am. Still standing. Still running. And you, still questioning. Maybe the system isn't broken. Maybe it chose the better self after all. Caroline hesitated. For the first time, just for a moment, she wasn't sure who was right. She lowered the gun and reached into her coat, pulled out the shard. The edit's smile faltered. What is that? This. Caroline whispered. This is the memory you didn't get. The piece you missed. The guilt, the loss, the part of me that never wanted perfection. She slammed the shard against the source mirror. The glass screamed. The mirror cracked from the center outward. Not shattered, fractured into identity. Both Carolines were pulled backward. The chair exploded in sparks. The edit screamed, not from pain, but from dissolution. Its face flickered between thousands of possibilities. Then it disappeared entirely. Gone. Erased. The source mirror stilled. Just glass now. Just reflection. Caroline stood alone. Breathing. Shaking. Alive. Still herself. But only the mirror knew for sure. Chapter 23. The Woman in the Mirror. Orpheus Residences, Sublevel 0. 12:34 p.m. Detective Caroline Blake stood alone in the room that shouldn't exist, surrounded by shattered glass and dying reflections. The source mirror had stopped pulsing. The edit was gone. The chair had collapsed into itself, just twisted metal and memory. The system was dead, or so it claimed. But even in stillness, the mirrors hummed, whispered, waited. She turned slowly toward the wall she had entered through. There was no door now. No seam. Only an unbroken surface of mirror, smooth and black as oil. And in it, she saw herself. Only, it wasn't a reflection. It was a recording. The Caroline in the glass was sitting at a desk. The one from her apartment, writing in her notebook. Same coat. Same expression. Same bleeding lip. A perfect memory. She remembered that moment, hours ago, before she found the archive, before the source room. She'd been writing theories about the edit, about the surveillance notes. She stared into the mirror. The woman inside looked up and met her eyes. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then the mirror Caroline smiled. Not cruelly, not wickedly, but with recognition. You found me, the reflection said. Caroline blinked. I am you. The reflection shook her head slowly. No, you were built from me. A path I didn't walk. A decision I didn't make. You're the one who fought back. You're the one who survived. Caroline took a step closer. Then what are you? The mirror smiled again. I'm the version that stayed behind. Every time you looked into the glass and wondered if you were still you, you were looking at me. The mirror shifted. The woman in the glass stood up, stepped forward, and the mirror rippled. Not like before. This wasn't an invasion. It was an invitation. One of us has to stay here. That's the rule. Caroline's breath caught. Why? Because the mirror always remembers. Because someone has to carry the weight of all the unchosen lives. And because someone has to walk free. The light in the room dimmed. The mirror glowed from within. The woman inside lifted her hand. Choose, Caroline. Do you return to the world? Or do you take my place, so she can? Caroline stared at her reflection. Thought of the edit. Thought of the shard in her coat, the voices that whispered, the lives erased, the looping agony of perfection gone wrong. Then she thought of Reyes, of the city above, of everything left to fix. Her reflection tilted its head, and for a moment, Caroline thought she saw relief in its eyes. You've already decided, the woman whispered. Caroline stepped forward, placed her hand on the glass, and whispered, You've carried it long enough. A surge of warmth spread from her fingertips. The mirror pulled inward, not violently, but gently. A deep exhale after years of silence. Their hands met. The woman in the mirror smiled one last time and stepped backward into the room. Caroline stepped forward and into the world. Reyes found her in the elevator lobby, slumped against the mirrored wall. Alive. Shaking. Eyes clear. You made it, he breathed. Caroline nodded slowly. Yeah, she said. I think I did. But as they walked toward the elevator, she didn't look back. And neither of them noticed that in the mirrored wall behind them, the woman still stood, smiling, waiting, watching. Chapter 24. Glass cuts deep. Orpheus Residences, 47th floor. 1:03 p.m. The light in the hallway felt different now. Not brighter. Not darker. Just thinner. As if it had been stretched over something it couldn't quite hide. Detective Caroline Blake walked beside Reyes, her boots silent against the polished floor. She hadn't spoken since resurfacing from sublevel 0. And he hadn't pushed. He was just glad she was back. He'd seen too many versions of her in surveillance. Too many flickering falsehoods. Too many almosts. But this one, this Caroline, breathed differently. More deliberately. Like she'd walked through hell and stitched herself back together with the silence between screams. And yet, the mirrors still lined the walls. Polished. Neutral. Reflective. And every few steps, Reyes glanced at her reflection. Just to be sure. She washed her hands slowly. Watched the water pool in the sink like memory trying to drain. Her face looked normal again. No glitches. No delay. But when she leaned closer, her eyes caught something behind her. In the mirror, on the wall above the door, there was a hairline crack. Not visible to the naked eye. Only in reflection. She turned. The wall was smooth. She turned back. The crack remained. Like a scar the room itself refused to forget. Later that afternoon, as she reached for a file in her desk drawer, her palm brushed against a shard she hadn't seen before. A sliver of mirror. So small it had wedged between papers like a razor in a confession. It sliced her skin. Not deep, but precise. Blood beaded instantly, bright against her skin. She hissed. Looked at the wound. Then at the mirror fragment. And in its tiny surface. She saw her face. Only her. But it smiled before she did. Reyes returned with coffee and grim expressions. City's sending an internal review team, he said. They want full reports. Everything we've seen. What we broke. What still works. Caroline didn't respond right away. She wrapped her hand in gauze and stared at the window across from her desk. What do you see when you look at your reflection? She asked. Reyes blinked. No. She nodded. I see a man who doesn't know if he's the last original version of himself, he said quietly. Then he added, But I trust you. And I trust that whatever walked out of that room, it wasn't her. She finally looked at him. Smiled faintly. Let's hope the building agrees. Later that night, alone again, she walked through the apartment one last time. Turning off lights. Checking locks. Touching each mirror with the back of her fingers. Testing. Waiting. And then, in the hallway mirror outside her bedroom, she saw it. The smile. Too wide. Too early. The mirror version blinked out of sync. Then reached up and pressed its hand against the glass. She stepped forward. And this time, her reflection stayed still. The woman in the mirror whispered something. Caroline leaned in. Read her lips. I never left. And the crack in the mirror? It grew. Just a little. But it was enough. Instead, she sits on the edge of the bed with the lights on, watching the mirror across the room. Watching herself. Her hands still bleeding. Her memories still rearranging themselves like broken footage trying to loop. And she whispers, softly, I made it out. I won. But even she doesn't believe it anymore. Not completely. Because glass cuts deep. And memory bleeds forever. Chapter 25, The Last Reflection. Orpheus Residences, 47th floor. 3:06 a.m. The building was silent. The kind of silence that isn't the absence of sound, but the presence of something waiting. Detective Caroline Blake sat in the middle of her apartment floor, surrounded by shattered mirror shards, laid out like evidence bags in an unsolved case. Each one shimmered faintly in the lamplight, catching fragments of her reflection, a lip twitch, a tear welling, a blink she hadn't blinked, pieces of herself, but none of them whole. She held the shard that had cut her earlier. Not large, not sharp anymore, but still warm. She lifted it and looked into its heart. No tricks this time. No edits. Just a memory. Not hers. The edits. Standing in the red room, watching her walk away, and whispering, you left the mirror, but the mirror didn't leave you. She lowered the shard. Her breath caught. It wasn't over. Because Orpheus was never just a place. It was a system. A loop. A mind. And minds don't die, they evolve. At dawn, she returned to the hallway outside her door. The place it all began. The mirror that had shown her the first delay. The first smile that wasn't hers. She stood before it now. Older. Tired. But clearer than ever. Her reflection looked back. For a moment, perfectly synced. Then, it spoke. But not aloud. Its lips moved in silence. Words formed behind the glass like frost on steel. I chose you. Caroline didn't move. The mirror blinked. You were the version that looked back. She stepped closer, laid her palm flat against the cold surface. What do you want from me? Her voice was steady. The reflection tilted its head. And for the first time since it all began, it smiled with sadness. Nothing now. You're already one of us. Later that day, Reyes found Caroline on the rooftop. She was sitting in the far corner, coat wrapped tight, eyes fixed on the mirrored skyline. Are we done? He asked. She didn't look at him. No, why not? She turned to him slowly. The system was built to find the best version of a person. He nodded. And she held up her hand, still bandaged. The moment it stopped trying to replace me, it won. Reyes frowned. I don't follow. Caroline looked back at the skyline and whispered, because now I do it myself. Mirror_1, reinstalled. Mirror_2, reinstalled. Mirror_3, reinstalled. Personality echo, Blake_C status, stable. Behavioral drift, minimal note, mirror sync past. Reflection retained. Cycle continues. The case may be closed for now, but mysteries always leave behind new questions. If you enjoyed this investigation, leave a like. Every clue you find keeps the trail alive. Share your theories in the comments. Your mind might be sharper than you think. And subscribe to our channel Detective Mystery Stories, where every case hides a deeper secret, and every secret deserves to be uncovered. The next mystery is already waiting for you.